welcome to My Favorite Person, the #1 rated podcast about the manufactured housing industry in South Carolina. In fact, the only podcast about the manufactured housing industry in South Carolina. I'm Clayton Evans, director of the podcast, and here's our host and producer, Mark Dillard.
So, Clayton, who's our guest today?
Well, I'll give you some clues. He has a cool accent, a fashionable shaved head, and grew up on a marshy island.
Okay, let's see. He talks weird, he's bald, and he grew up in a swamp, right?
That is not what I said.
Well, let me think. All right. Bald, talks weird, grew up in a swamp. Dale Lackey.
We'll just ignore Mark, folks. Our real guest today is Mark Street, the owner of Carolina Country Homes and one of the most successful sellers of modular homes in the state. Do you want to see if you can do a proper introduction now?
Our guest today is Mark Street. He's the owner of Carolina Country Homes up in Lancaster. We've interviewed some people who had an interesting background. I think Mark is the perfect example of that. He has lived a life that has been very productive and very different from a lot of us. For example, where he was born. A lot of our guys are born in Florence and Easley and places like that. Mark, tell us where you grew up.
Well, I was actually born just southwest of London, a little town called Carshalton, but I grew up on an island in the Thames estuary called the Isle of Sheppey, 9 miles long, 5 miles wide. Got a long history. One time was invaded by the Dutch, very strategic. Gun emplacements in World War II, protecting the Thames, but really sheep farming country. So I'm a rural boy, so not that different to South Carolina, but a little different part of the world.
Wow. Now, what did your father do there?
He did lots of things. He was originally, he was Royal Navy, got out the year I was born. My mum actually flew down to Malta to buy him out because that was the way it used to work back then. She wanted him out of the Navy before I was born. And then he was an electrician by trade originally, but he got into furniture and carpets. He was running furniture stores and carpet stores, sales guy, basically. Traveled the country kind of fixing underperforming stores.
What was his background?
He was a Cockney, but, we used to use a lot of the, Cockney rhyming slang. So things like, who's your trouble? Well, your trouble is your wife, because it's trouble and strife. Wife is kind of how that works. And you're going up the apples, which are really the stairs, because it's apples and pears stairs. They're just, porkies is the one that still gets used a lot, which means lies. If you're telling someone a lie, that's a pork pie. So it's shortened to pork. You're telling me porkies. All that stuff. It's a different world.
So you moved to London. How did that come about?
It was just time. I grew up on the island, joined the local steel company as a trainee accountant. Didn't go to university. They said they'd put me through night school, so I got qualified. Spent about 7 years there, but really. Yeah, the island's a small place, and I realized I was kind of running out of opportunity. And so I decided to make the move and go to the big city. So I got a job up in South London, working in the equipment rental business, something completely different. Good promotion for me. I got to be a controller of a UK company, and it was just the time. But the way that the company operated was very different. I mean, we'd have big expense budgets. We were out, wining and dining, and I did a lot of traveling around Europe. So it was just a very, very different life, hanging out with a bunch of very different people. I ended up as the UK controller going in, and then within about 2 months, I became a European controller. That's what started off as a fairly small company that was acquiring a lot of companies. And so I was the finance end for all of the acquisitions. It's kind of crazy. I think back now, I was 25 years old and I'm touring around Europe buying, 10, 20 million pound companies. The legal side of it was very different. The UK is quite contract driven, and we have very, very heavy contracts, a bit like the US in that sense. But places like Germany, you had to be very, very careful, because you'd be sitting in a meeting and negotiating a contract, and you'd have an attorney taking notes. And you had to know that those notes were a legally enforceable part of the contract. And so you couldn't just wing it in the meeting like you could in some countries, Germany in particular.
Now, you had a major role in a major company with Meineke.
I moved from the equipment rental company. I joined an engineering company, GKN, which is a big multinational company. Ended up on their management development team. They moved me out to Memphis originally for a short period, and then to Charlotte. I was on the board with Meineke, so
Wow.
pretty senior position.
Yeah, really.
And then we started growing that business because we made a few acquisitions. We acquired Mako, we acquired Econolu, a bunch of automotive franchise companies, and created a new entity called Driven Brands. And Driven Brands today is a public company that I think is valued at about $3 billion. So,
Man,
stuck around, shouldn't I? I might have made a bit more money.
How many stores did y'all have when you were with them?
Meineke was about 900, I think, 950 stores, probably 1,000 if you book, because we had some international. I was doing international development as well, selling franchises around the world. We were probably 1,000 stores total. And then Mako was, I think, about 500. Econolu was about 300, something like that. So there was probably, you took them all together, probably a couple of thousand units.
A pretty interesting change from being a European international franchise person for Meineke to being in the home business here in South Carolina. How did that come about?
One of those kind of freaky, fluky moments. I wasn't really looking for it. I was looking to buy a business. I'd ended up kind of corporate reshuffle. I was out of the corporate world. Corporate world didn't like me, and to be honest, I wasn't enjoying the corporate world either. You get to be 50, and you're kind of on your way out. So I after doing a bit of consulting, I was looking to buy a business, and thought I was looking for a franchise business. But just a good friend of mine ended up sitting next to David Amigo, the then owner of Carolina Country Homes, at a baseball event, which was being sponsored by some business brokers, and that he had the business listed with, and kind of one thing led to another. And this friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey, you should talk to David. I think this is your business." And it was kind of weird because I thought he was stupid, but I sat down with David and had the conversation, and it was incredible actually how similar it was to franchise development. It was a big digital marketing campaign, which is the way David had the business set up. You had a group of sales guys who were selling a high dollar product, very contractually oriented with a big funding component, and then you had to basically manage the construction process on the back end, which is exactly what I used to do when I was running franchise development. So all the pieces were very similar to what I knew. It's just I had no background in construction, so I had to go learn that piece. But the business part side was actually very familiar to me. So
you're primarily or exclusively modular?
I don't believe that you can mix the two. I don't have a problem with HUD, and I mean it's who knows, maybe down the road I may end up getting involved in that business. But I struggle to really see how you'd sell both off the same lot, because they really do compete at some level. So I keep it simple for my sales guys. They just sell modular.
When people come in, do they have an idea in their head that there's a distinction between modular and manufactured homes, or what?
In the main they do. And we've kind of encouraged that on the website. One of the big changes we made, and it was in a numerical sense, it hurt us, because we started putting at least some price indicators on our website. And modular is going to be more expensive than the manufactured housing, and so we need people to know that before they came in. So we started putting that on the website, not just saying the words, but putting numbers out there so that people understood the difference. And so in the main, the people that are coming into us, they know, they're pretty well educated now. I think it's gotten better. I would say when I first 2015, 16, I'd say less so. It seemed to be more blurred between modular and manufactured. Now, don't get me wrong, we still get a lot of people that come in who think that we're selling mobile homes. And I love the fact that we're a mile down the road from the Clayton store, because Clayton spends a bunch of money on advertising. They bring people into Lancaster.
Do you get much walk-in traffic, or is it more people learn about you on the internet, or?
That's very difficult. Yes, I'm trying to work that out myself. So if I go with just the numbers that we see, it's about 50-50. So about 50% of the people that come to this, no one really buys unless at some point they come to the sales center. So we track who's coming to the sales center, and about half of the people that show up are already in our system because they've already registered with us online.
Right.
And about half we've never seen before. They just walk in. So, but I actually believe that most of the people that walk in have already researched us online. I mean, it's not like Lancaster's really on the map, on anybody's map, unless you're in the area. Right. So particularly those people that are coming from outside the general area, you got to believe that they looked us up. And we rank well because of that digital marketing spend. We rank well on SEO. So we're paying for clicks, but we're also ranked very well for just the organic. Mm-hmm. So we're typically up there, number one, number two, most of the time.
Number one or number two in terms of what?
So if you go do a search online and you type in, modular South Carolina or modular whatever, then mm-hmm. we're gonna be up there. And of course, the way that Google does it is you've got the sponsored links first because they want you to spend the money. Then they show you the organic links underneath. And so that's the danger of just relying on the organic and trying to just elevate your website by having a good website and making sure it's appealing to everybody. Google's always going to put those sponsored links first. So if you're not paying for the clicks, the danger is the customer doesn't see you, even though you've got the best ranking website in the state. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. They're mean like that, So,
Mark, you've been active in a group we call the South Carolina Modular Steering Committee, which is sort of the board for the modular aspect of our association. What do you get out of participating in that process?
I think it's been good. I think the association seems to have a good relationship with the state. Just from my perspective, I mean, there have been some things that have come up where I felt like as an industry we needed to get some things done, and it seems to me the state is listening.
Well, Mark, we appreciate all you do for the industry, the way you're active in the association, and the great reputation that you're bringing to our industry up in that part of the state. Thanks for being on the podcast, and we will see you soon.